This show is brought to you by the All Pro Nation Radio Network. Be sure to like and subscribe and check us out online at allpronation.com, where fans have a voice.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to the Sports Breach Podcast. I'm your host, Victor Locabetis. Thanks for tuning in. If you're getting us on the APN Radio Network, thanks for finding us there. We're also out there on Libsyn. We're also available through the Apple Podcast. You can subscribe through both of those locations. So, big week coming up here. We got the March Madness started this week. The NCAA tournament seedings were announced on Sunday. Those games will start later this week. Lots to talk about in the NFL. This is free agent frenzy going on right now. And got some Major League Baseball stuff to talk about as well. We're not going to be doing the American League Central preview as originally announced. That'll be on our next show, which will be the last show before I go to Arizona. I'll be in Arizona for 3 days next week, and then we'll be doing those teams' previews would be the NL West and AL West when I get back the week of the 19th. So it pushes things back a little bit, but that's okay. So the NFL, Kirk Cousins, looks like he may actually have a home. Arizona and the Jets are not completely out of it, but the rumor now, as of today, is that Cousins is likely to sign a 3-year, $86 million deal with Minnesota. Minnesota was certainly the best team available for Cousins to go to. I liked him going to Arizona just because they were potentially an up-and-comer if he went there. But there's no debating Minnesota would be the best ready-made destination for Cousins. It appears the contract will be completely guaranteed. All $86 million will be guaranteed for Cousins to go there. So we'll see what happens if that gets when that gets announced. But 3 years, $86 million for Cousins to go to the Vikings. It is an upgrade for them at quarterback, going from Keenum to Cousins. So, again, we'll see when that gets announced, as long as it occurs and the Cardinals at the last minute or even the Jets don't hop in at the last minute and take him away. Drew Brees has signed a 2-year, $50 million deal to stay with the Saints. Former Viking Case Keenum, speaking of, looks like he's going to go and sign on with the Denver Broncos. So what does this mean for the Minnesota Vikings and Cousins? I mean, he's thrown for 4,000-plus yards the last 2 years. Last year in Washington really didn't have any weapons. They brought in Terrell Pryor, had guys getting hurt. At one point, Thompson was their leading receiver, and then he eventually got hurt. They lost Garcon, and they lost Deshaun Jackson, who really were his weapons the year before. Now, he's thrown for a lot of yards, has not yet topped 30 touchdowns. His record, I believe, as a starter, something like 24-23. But he goes to a ready-made Viking team that got to the NFC Championship game last year, despite not having your starting quarterback. And Case Keenum, being the backup, led them through most of that year into a 13-3 record. Into the NFC Championship game. So, Cousins has to be excited. He'll get Dalvin Cook back at running back next year. They've got a fantastic defense, best defense in the NFC, with Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Rudolph. They've got weapons for him to throw to. So, you got to expect, I think that Cousins could have a really solid statistical year in Minnesota next year. And with the defense and the other things in place, some of the pressure, despite the contract, may not fall directly on his shoulders. He's not won a playoff game, and he has just a barely above 500 record as a starter. But I think the Vikings did exactly what they had to do. They went out and got the best quarterback available in the market. And like I said, unless something happens at the last minute, Cousins will be a Viking, and that spells trouble for the rest of the Vikings division. It really kind of spells trouble for the rest of the NFC. Despite the Eagles and some of the things they've done, which we'll talk about in a moment, and the defending Super Bowl champions, the circumstances around Carson Wentz not knowing when he'll be back, if he'll be back to start the season, I think gives the Vikings right now, they're the number one team in my mind to get out of the NFC in 2018 and go to the Super Bowl. And speaking of the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, they just picked up Michael Bennett from the Seattle Seahawks, trading Marcus Johnson and a 5th-round pick for Bennett and a 7th-rounder from Seattle. Now, Bennett took, I think it was something like 930 defensive snaps last year. Nobody on the Eagles had more than, I think, 660. They're renowned for the rotation they used this past year. Guys like Long, Bennett, Barnett, not Bennett, Barnett, Curry, Graham, Fletcher Cox, Jernigan. They just kept rotating guys, Bo Allen, and that kept everybody fresh. So nobody got, I believe 660-something was the top snaps given for the Eagles defense. So we'll see what happens. They were able to trade Torrey Smith for a cornerback from the Panthers. So, they have depth at corner at this point in time. But, they're still over the cap. We'll see what happens now that Ron Worley is in the fold in the defensive backfield. Will they trade a cornerback? Will they end up trying to find a home for Vinny Curry, who signed a huge contract a couple of years ago, didn't really live up to it in 16, played a lot better this past year for the Super Bowl champs, but has a pretty big number that they kind of need to get rid of. And then you have the quandary about Nick Foles. The rumor is that the Eagles are taking offers on Foles, but they want more than what they got for Bradford, as mentioned on my show last week. They got a 1st and a 4th for Bradford, so that would mean for Foles they would want at least a 1st and probably a better 4th pick than they got for Bradford, or at least a 3rd-round pick. And again, we'll see when all the musical chairs with the free agent quarterbacks ends, what teams are left without a chair to sit on, basically. The other possibility with the Eagles, too, is that Patrick Robinson, who came in on a 1-year deal, actually, he even thought he would get cut during training camp, did not play well, played really good during the season as a slot corner. There's talk that the Eagles will try to re-sign him and bring him back into the fold as well. So, it's going to be interesting to see what names for the Eagles will be gone. It appears Trey Burton's already going to be out the door. 4 years, $32 million, I think, with the Chicago Bears. So he was an outstanding 2nd, 3rd tight end for a few years with Philadelphia, but now, it's time to get paid. He's going to move on. You got, of the defensive backfield, for the Eagles, do you trade Jalen Mills? He's younger, has control. You just traded for Ronald Darby last year. Do you deal him at some point now to try and help make some room? Is Curry out the door? Brandon Graham is going to want to get paid. He's under contract till the end of the year. You're going to be able to extend him, or is he a guy you look to trade to another ball club? I've said before, kind of need to bring back Nigel Bradham to help out the linebacking core. It's going to be interesting to see if anybody else knocks on his door and gives him a big contract that the Eagles just won't be able to match. So it would appear that Philly definitely has their work cut out for them. You've got the Vikings now bringing Cousins into the fold. That's going to make them, I think, a tremendous favorite in the NFC. And now Philly's got to work around these cap issues, which Howie Roseman's been a genius the last couple of years, starting with the flurry of trades to get rid of Chip Kelly's mistakes and ended up with Carson Wentz in that draft. And then, the same year being able to trade away Bradford and be able to get the pick from the Vikings that turned into Barnett last year. So I don't doubt that he can do it. It's just, going to be a question of what kind of maneuvering. Don't expect to see the Eagles in this first week of free agency really do anything. I think what the Eagles are going to kind of do is sit back, wait till the 2nd, maybe 3rd wave, where you've got guys who now are sitting, not getting the money they expected to get, and see the Eagles swoop in and maybe get some real value at some of the positions that they really need to fill. Another playoff team, the L.A. Rams, have been real active as well, trading for Marcus Peters and also Akeem Talib from the Broncos. It really upgrades their defensive backfield. They had a pretty solid defense to begin with, have a dynamite offense. So that's going to be interesting. Sammy Watkins is gone, though. He's just signed a 3-year, looks like $48 million deal with the Chiefs. So now the Chiefs, with Mahomes at quarterback, he's got some real weapons to hit now. You've got Tyreek, the freak Hill, and now you got Watkins. That's a nice wide receiver tandem for him. And, you've already got Travis Kelce, who is, I think, for everything, the best tight end in football right now, given Gronkowski, being hurt a good bit of the 16 season. Now to find 17, but I think Travis Kelce is now the number 1 tight end in the NFL. And the 49ers have inked Richard Sherman, 3 years, $39 million a year, $13 million a year for Sherman to come to the 49ers. Don't know what he has left in the tank. Solid, great player for a long time. Unfortunately, got hurt last year, but the 49ers seem to think that he'll be ready and able to contribute to them. So we'll see how Sherman does for the Niners. Certainly in the same division as the Seahawks. I'm sure he'll have a chip on his shoulder when they see the Seahawks twice. And I guess it's time to throw the curtain, kick the dirt on the casket that was the Legion of Boom in Seattle. Clearly they've moved on. They've purged their coaching staff. Bennett's gone. Sherman's gone. It seems like anybody who was a little outspoken, well, for lack of a better term, has been shown the door with the Seahawks. So we'll be interested to see what head coach Pete Carroll can do with that ball club. Now some of the obvious changes that are going to be made. The Seahawks are notorious. They've never spent money on an offensive line. You saw Russell Wilson last year pretty much trying to do things on his own because he had to. The defense was not as good as it had been. A lot of that was injuries. So, we'll see how that division shapes up. There's some now that think the 49ers are a legitimate contender in that division. I'm not one of them. I still think that the Rams are going to be the favorite in that division. And as long as you got Russell Wilson, I don't see that. I don't see where the Seahawks are not going to be in that mix as well. The 49ers. Garoppolo came in. He won some games at the end of the year, and I said this a million times. I'll say it again. Let's see what he does over a full year before we start anointing the 49ers as the NFC West champs. They are headed in the right direction. I didn't agree with the contract they gave to Garoppolo. Okay, I hope it works out for them. I think the Sherman deal, if nothing else, his leadership on this ball club will be huge. His attitude, he gives it everything he's got on every down. So we'll see what that'll do for the 49ers this coming season. And then, hey, not to be outdone, the Cleveland Browns actually made some moves, and they actually appear to be smart, good moves, to be honest with you. All right, so here's what happened. They got Tyrod Taylor, which they traded pick number 65 to the Bills for. They went out and they also got Jarvis Landry from the Dolphins. So they're going to try and extend Landry, but they'll pay him the $16 million tag that the Dolphins were on the hook for. Gordon will be back. Josh Gordon will be back. They've got Duke Johnson, obviously. Then they went and made a deal with the Packers. They got cornerback Demarius Randall, who upgrades the Browns' defensive backfield. They traded Deshaun Kaiser, and they're swapping 4th and 5th round picks with the Packers. So Kaiser's out, first-round pick for the Browns last year. So we'll see what they do in the draft. I tell you what, and I said this last week, boy, if they draft Saquon Barkley with the first pick in the draft, and I'm not a big Tyrod Taylor fan by any stretch of the imagination, but as a bridge the gap guy, this could be a good solid move for the Browns. It's an NFL experienced quarterback who can run, who can throw, who can stay out of trouble. And again, if it's just for a year or two, I said before, you draft Saquon Barkley with the first pick, come back at 4 and draft the best quarterback available. You've got a guy that can just sit there with the clipboard in his hand and a baseball cap on his head, standing on the sidelines watching Tyrod Taylor for like a year, maybe a year and a half. But then you've also got a solid running back. Then you've got Johnson and Saquon Barkley in your backfield. You've got weapons now. You got Landry, Josh Gordon, if he can stay out of trouble and he can play and be on the field. I've said this before too, availability is your best ability. And Gordon didn't do the Browns any favors or himself by having the off the field issues that caused him to be suspended for the better part of the last few years. But if he's clean and ready to go, that's a nice wide receiver tandem. And again, let's not get ahead of ourselves. The Browns are not going to turn around and go from 0-16 to 8-8, 9-7. But, wouldn't the fans like to see 5-6 wins? Isn't that possible? Didn't the Browns almost win a couple of games this year? They had the Packers down and couldn't put them away. I think they also almost beat the Steelers at one point this year too. So, the Browns are moving in the right direction, which is what the fan base wants to see. It's really what the NFL wants to see. You don't want to, there's just certain teams you just don't want to see bad in sports. The Celtics and the Lakers and the NBA and the Sixers to some degree. those are teams you don't want to see be perennially terrible. In baseball, the Yankees, certainly you don't want to see them be a cellar dweller for a number of years. You can have the occasional off year, but you certainly don't want to see them be bad. The Red Sox as well, some of those long-time teams. You just don't want to see them be bad. Hockey, the Bruins, the Flyers, the Rangers, for instance. So the Browns are one of those teams. I know this is not the original Browns team, but you don't want to see them just be awful for all those years. The 49ers are another top ball club like that. You look at their history, especially the last 35 years. The Bill Walsh years and the Montana Rice era and everything. You just you don't want to see that team just be perennially bad all the time. So the Browns seem to be moving in the right direction. We'll see what else happens. They still have the free agency period, and then they've got the draft. So they're in a fantastic position to really make themselves a much better football team heading into 2018. For DeShone Kizer, and much of what happened with him is not his fault, but now DeShone Kizer gets to take a deep breath, exhale. He's going to Green Bay, and he'll get to sit back and watch Aaron Rodgers work. And he can learn from Aaron Rodgers. And if he's the next quarterback in Green Bay, great. If he goes somewhere else, he at least had that experience to just sit, be in the room with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, and that experience is just going to have to be invaluable for a young kid like Kizer, and you get thrust into a situation in Cleveland. It wasn't good. He had to play, and, sometimes it doesn't work out. So clearly the Browns, they can move on. They've upgraded their defensive backfield. So, like I said, the Browns certainly headed in the right direction. And the last thing second to last thing, actually, the Dolphins appear they're going to release Ndamukong Suh, 6-year, $114 million contract he signed in 2015. They looks like they're going to release him and then save a ton of money in terms of the cap. I think I want to say it's $11 million. I think it was the number I saw. So he'll should be a free agent as well. So we'll see what happens there. I know a lot of Eagles fans are saying they'd love to see him come in and reunite with Jim Schwartz on the Eagles defense. But going back to the Michael Bennett trade, I mean, you look at that rotation, you look at what Bennett could do, not having to take so many defensive snaps. Even if they deal Curry, you're still on third down. You've got Brent, you got Graham, you got Fletcher Cox. Chris Long is certainly a guy you're bringing on third down. You got Bennett. I mean, that could wreak some serious havoc with the quarterbacks in the NFC East, especially. So you have to like that move for Philly, defending Super Bowl champ. You're bringing a guy like Bennett who's won a Super Bowl, knows what it's like to defend a Super Bowl. So that's the other thing with the Eagles team you've got as well. You got a guy in Jenkins in the defensive backfield. Long, Bennett all know what it's like. To have that big target on your back when you've won a Super Bowl and come out the next year and everybody's gunning for you. The one thing you could say about the Eagles this year was that they snuck. You can say they snuck up on people. The expectation for them was anywhere from 7-9 to 10-6. Maybe get a wild card. Maybe you'll win a first-round playoff game. Maybe. There are a lot of maybes. Maybe Carson Wentz takes a step forward, which he did. But there were a lot of maybes. Nobody saw the Eagles winning a Super Bowl, okay? One of the biggest surprises probably in sports you're going to see this year. So now they've got to defend it, and they've got to defend it with everybody else in the NFL saying, okay, we know who you are now, and we're going to come and get you. The Cowboys had to deal with that this past year as well. They were 13-3 the previous season. They won the NFC East, and they had to come back and they had to defend it. And they didn't do very well. They had other issues. Certainly injuries, the Ezekiel Elliott fiasco, Dak Prescott definitely took a step backwards. I don't think he's as bad as what he showed in some of those games where Elliott wasn't around, but I still don't think he's as good as he was in 13. But if he's somewhere in the middle, okay, then the Cowboys still have a good quarterback. It's not like Dak Prescott suddenly is the worst quarterback in the NFL. So the Cowboys certainly could make some noise this season coming in. They've got a few places they've got to take care of and everything, but they certainly can make some noise. But for the Eagles, you've got to be smart. You've got to try and defend the championship, and that's one of the reasons I've been very against trading Nick Foles because as the Vikings found out, having to come to Philly, every win is important when you're talking about the NFL and the playoff seeding. And for the Eagles, having home field is paramount. And there isn't, I've said it before, there isn't a pick out there that can replace having home field advantage in the playoffs. And, if you trade Foles for a first and a third, it's not going to be a high first. Okay? It's not. Nobody in the top 10 is going to trade you for Nick Foles. It's not going to happen. So, tread cautiously on that, as they say. But, we'll see what occurs. It's going to be a very interesting free agent period, very interesting draft. And then, once it gets here, it's going to be a very interesting football season. But before we get to football, obviously we got to get through the baseball season. And what an interesting offseason this has been, okay? Not a lot of money getting thrown around. So a lot of free agents were still out there, but here's what we have. The Moose is loose in Kansas City. Once again, Mike Moustakas is going back to Kansas City. 1 year, $8.5 million. Boy, times have changed. He gets $8.5 million for 1 year. Of the year he had it, 38 home runs, I believe, with the Royals. Plays very good defense out there. It was a big cog in a World Series championship a few years back. 1 year, $8.5. That's just, it's just teams aren't paying the money. They've learned. They learned from the bad Albert Pujols deals, the bad Matt Kemp deals, the bad Jose Reyes signings, the bad Pablo Sandoval signings. He got huge money and wasn't the player that Moustakas is right now. They're talking about a home team discount. So he goes back. Carlos Gonzalez, affectionately known as Cargo, goes back to the Rockies. 1 year, $8 million after testing the market, not getting what he thought he would get. So he goes back there as well. Neil Walker finally signed. We talked about him last week, and the Yankees signed him. Didn't really see that coming. I thought maybe the Brewers might still go grab him. The Diamondbacks I thought were a nice fit for him. Didn't see the Yankees, I'll be honest with you. But Walker signs a deal with the Yankees, and his expectation there is going to be to play some first base, some second base, and some third base. More than likely, I think he would be the starter at second base for them because now that gives the opportunity for them to get Gleyber Torres and Andujar some more seasoning in the minors. Andujar's had a fantastic spring, both very young, have a very bright future ahead of them. But the Yankees are in win mode, and a guy like Neil Walker, who is really, if you look at Walker, not spectacular over the years with Pittsburgh first and then with the Mets and Brewers last year, but solid every year. 23 home runs 2 years ago for the Mets. And their defense of the National League pennant helped get him back to the playoffs, but he was unable to play at a lower back issue. Hit 14 or 15 home runs last year. Had a nice on-base percentage, I know, against right-handed pitching last season. Played a number of positions. He does not play as well as he did with Pittsburgh. He was an above-average second baseman in Pittsburgh for a number of years, but toiled in mediocrity and anonymity there for the most part, even during their playoff run. Because, McCutchen was the big star there, but Walker was just a solid player there. Not won a Gold Glove. I don't think he's made an All-Star team. And never played in the World Series, and now he's going to get his chance. So he could DH for the Yankees a bit. He could play first, play second, and play third base. I know that Brandon Drury is the third baseman with the Yankees. But, again, you can mixing and matching of different things. The Yankees certainly could get Walker in the lineup on an almost everyday basis. Danny Espinosa got released as part of this whole thing. He was, I think, 4 for 25 in the spring. Again, I talked about him before. Great glove, power. Does not hit for a good batting average, does not walk a lot. So clearly the Yankees felt they'd seen enough of Danny Espinosa. Lance Lynn got a 1 year deal with the Minnesota Twins, $12 million. It was one that I was thinking the Phillies would be able to go out and sign, but the Phillies instead chose to go the Jake Arrieta route. And Jake Arrieta, 3 years, $75 million. His contract breaks down at $30 million for 2018. $25 million next year, and then $20 million if he's around 2020. There's an opt-out for him at the end of 2 seasons, which I'm almost certain if he pitches even reasonably well, he will take, because I know he and his agent, Scott Boras, who clearly misread this market, by the way. So if Scott Boras, if anything, he does not have a future in commodities, trading, stocks, any of that stuff, because clearly, he cannot read a market, and that's what happened here this year. But yeah, Arrieta clearly has declined since his 15 Cy Young Award season. He had a 1.77 ERA that year. That went up to 3.53 last year. So in the course of 2 seasons, his ERA is almost doubled, quite honestly. Didn't even average 6 innings a start last year. He pitched 168 innings and 30 starts last year, 197 the year before that, 229 in his Cy Young year. So clearly, and his strikeouts per 9 are down. Home runs are up. And, he gave 23 home runs and 168 innings in Wrigley Field last year. How many do you think he's going to give up pitching in Philadelphia? I mean, my God. And, you're looking, he could give up 40 pitching there, if he gets 30-plus starts. I saw one guy on Twitter, radio personality in Philadelphia. He's thinking Arrieta has 14 wins, 3.53 ERA, and a 1.22 WHIP this year for Philadelphia, and pitching 185 innings. Now, good luck. I mean, I hope he does. And I kind of get a bad rap. I've been called Debbie Downer. I've been getting lit up on Twitter after the signing. I didn't like the signing. You got a 32-year-old pitcher, okay, who's on the wrong side of 30, whose numbers are completely trending the wrong way, okay, and people are talking about, well, this guy come in to eat. The Phillies needed a guy to come in and eat innings and all this other stuff. Jake Arrieta is not an innings eater. 168 innings over 30 starts is not what I call a guy who eats innings. I'm sorry. And it's been pointed out to me that Jacob deGrom averages less than 6 a start, which he did not last year. Syndergaard for his career is under 6. Well, it's barely under 6, and a lot of that's because he got hurt last year. Those two guys are horses when they're healthy, and that's what's in the Phillies division. I don't see Max Scherzer going 5-6 innings. It was brought up that that's the way of baseball now. You go 5-6 innings, and then the parade of bullpen guys comes in. Well, here's the issue with that. You can't do it in all 5-year rotation spots, or you're going to have a gassed bullpen by July. And, I'm sorry, Max Scherzer's not coming out of a freaking game after 6 innings. Okay, he's going as far as he can. Strasburg isn't coming out after 5 innings, okay, unless he's got a hangnail. Look at Madison Bumgarner out in San Francisco. You think he comes after 6 innings? Hell no. So, Matt Harvey famously stayed in a game he shouldn't have stayed in the World Series after 8 innings. Okay? And that to me, that changed the whole course of that World Series. So don't give me, the 5-6 and let's bring in the bullpen. You can't do it. You just can't do it. I know that I've watched it on the MLB Network. I respect Brian Kenny. I love reading his stuff. I thoroughly enjoy watching him on TV. But the one thing he talks about all the time is not letting pitchers go through the lineup that third time, because each time, as they get more tired and everything, and the batters have seen them, okay, the batting averages given up go up, and the slugging percentages go up the whole 9 yards. And he's a big proponent of running the bullpen guys out there. But the problem is you just don't have enough bullpen arms to do it, and he can't do it every day. And if you're paying a guy $30 million, and when the Red Sox signed David Price a couple of years ago, I remember Chris Russo right on TV said it himself. He's like, this guy, if you're paying that kind of money, you want a guy that's got a good postseason record, can pitch deep into games, and David Price at that time wasn't the guy. So here we are with Jake Arrieta, okay, granted 3 years ago was a great pitcher. Came out of nowhere and was unbelievably good for that Cubs team that almost got to a World Series. Won 18 games 2 years ago for the World Champions. So but my point is, if you're paying $30 million for a season for this guy, he's got to get you close to 200 innings, okay? He's got to get you more than 30 starts. He's got to be a guy that every day that he's due to pitch, he takes the ball, he goes out there, and he pitches as deep in the game as he can to save your bullpen, okay? And then you got the other geniuses out there, we'll call them, who now suddenly think the Phillies are going to go to the playoffs. It's not happening. The Phillies have so many question marks on that ball club, and I've been through them so many times. You have a rookie manager who you have no idea how he's going to handle certain situations in a ball game, okay? when to make a double switch, when to pull your pitcher, matchups, when to hit for somebody. Is he going to look at the other team's pitcher and determine, can I sneak another left-handed bat in there today, or do I go with my normal lineup? Is this guy struggling? Do I ride him out? Do I give him a day off? We don't know how he's going to handle these things. Okay, we had no idea yet. We do not know if J.P. Crawford can hit Major League pitching. Okay, he had a nice run last year. He walked a bit. He showed a good eye at the plate. We do not know defensively what he's going to be like. Okay, we think he's going to be really good, but we don't know. We really don't. We knew Freddie Galvis was a Gold Glove caliber shortstop. I don't mind that they traded him, but we don't know what we have with J.P. Crawford. Alfaro behind the plate. Again, he had a nice 100-at-bat tryout last year. Okay, he certainly showed he can hit a bit. But again, the knock on him coming up through the minors to some degree was his defense. He's got a great arm, but again, there's more to it than just having a good arm, being able to hit and everything else. He's got to be able to call pitches, and he's got to be able to block balls in the dirt. A lot of other things there. Rhys Hoskins, who had a great 50 games for the Phillies last year, showed tremendous power, patient eye at the plate. That's 50 games, and now he's also playing left field, which is not a position he plays regularly. So again, we'll see what happens. But Jake Arrieta is not going to take a team. I think that the Phillies are a 76, 77 win team. They went backwards last year. Okay, last year was the year to me they should have won 78 games. That's what I had them. I had them in that 77 to 79 win category last year. Okay, but Eichhoff didn't get off to a good start and ended up missing some starts. Nola didn't pitch the full year. I think that Velasquez took a step backwards. Guys like Franco took a huge step backwards. Tommy Joseph wasn't what they thought he would be. So you just had a lot of little things like that, and so they won 66 games. And I'm sorry, Jake Arrieta is not going to take a team from 66 wins to 85, 86, which is the minimum you need to get to the playoffs. Now, there are some peripheral things here that you can't measure really in dollars and cents or not stats. Will Jake Arrieta help this staff? Yes, he will help this staff because now Aaron Nola doesn't have to go up against the number one pitcher on the other team all the time. Eichhoff's now pitching in the third slot. Velasquez the fourth. Okay, so yes, that helps the Phillies. If Arrieta is healthy all year, he pitches out of your number one spot, and he gets to face off against those other guys. 2, he's a veteran presence, and that's fine. I get that. The other guys can watch what he does, his preparation, how he studies and analyzes hitters, what he goes through on his days off, everything. They can certainly learn some things from that, and that's invaluable stuff. So those are important things. Is it worth $30 million? Not in my mind. It's not worth $25 million next year either. Again, when these numbers are trending the way they are, it's not a good sign at 32 that his numbers have gone backwards as much as they have. So it'll be a wait and see. I still think the Phillies are the third, maybe the fourth best team in their own division, given what the Mets and Nats have. And the Braves certainly could be dangerous. So I think that the Braves and Phillies are kind of, you can flip them back and forth, pick either one third, pick the other one fourth, and not really have anything to worry about. Now, if, God forbid, the Phillies really regress and fall behind the Marlins, that's a whole other conversation. I don't think that's going to happen, but stranger things have occurred, unfortunately. But if you want to talk about the playoffs, you have to look at who are the Phillies better than. They're not better than the Mets, unless the Mets have a ton of injuries, starting with their pitchers. Because Syndergaard and DeGrom on the top of that rotation are better than anything the Phillies can throw out there, even with Arrieta. And I know I think Perspectives, one of those places, I think they had the Phillies at 78 wins before the signing. I'm sorry, I don't think Arrieta is worth +8, +9 wins on top of what they already had. I mean, they were going to obviously have 5 starters. Their 5th starter, in that spot's going to win, 10 games minimum, right? Between whoever they have to put in there. If Arrieta wins 14, that's only 4 more wins than what the guy in that 5th spot would have gotten you. So, right, so they're an 82 win team, and that's the right direction. Could the Phillies finish 500? Yeah, sure. I'm not betting on it. I'm betting that they win 76, 77 games because, again, at the end of the day, I think Gabe Kapler's going to cost them some wins. I think the youth of the team is going to cost them some wins. But they'll learn, and then we'll see what happens next year. And I think next year, the Phillies, if things go the way you would hope they would this year, next year is the year the Phillies could be a wild card team, maybe make a bit of a run for the division. Okay, the Nationals are awfully good, and they're not going anywhere. But right now, the Phillies are not better than the Mets and Nats in their own division. They're not better than the Cubs. They're not better than the Cardinals. They're not better than the Brewers. They're not better than the Dodgers. They're not better than the Giants, Rockies, or Diamondbacks. Those are facts. Okay? Those are the teams they're going to have to jump over to get to a wild card. And I don't believe, as presently constructed, they are better than any of those teams. So, as I said before, my prediction is a 76 and 86 win season. I hope Jake Arrieta works out well for him. I really do. Wouldn't have been the guy I signed. Lance Lynn's the guy I would have signed. 1 year, 12 he got with the Twins. He's younger. He's not trending the wrong way. And even Alex Cobb, I might have picked up before Arrieta. And, I know the Phillies are looking to make a splash. They've got a ton of money with this TV contract. Even if this turns out to be a bad contract, it won't hurt them. They won't not be able to recover from it. But you're getting fans' hopes up when realistically it's just not really going to be possible. So that's it for today. That's going to be our weekly show for today. Again, the Twitter handle is at BigGreek24. My email address is victorlogo13@gmail.com. The Facebook page is the Sports Greek. I contribute to two blogs, which is allpronation.com and phillysportsblogs.com. And again, our show is heard also on the APN Radio Network. I thank everybody who got the show from the APN Radio Network. Thanks again. If you got it from Apple Podcasts or the Libsyn feed, thank you very much for finding us there. We will be in Arizona. I will be in Arizona beginning Monday of next week, coming back late Thursday night. So we will have one more show that will go out Monday morning. And then when we get back from Arizona, we'll do some of the other previews from what we saw out in Arizona. Try and get some content while we're out in Arizona. So look on both blogs, both AP Nation and Philly Sports blogs. Should be posting articles and stuff throughout the week. I'll be going to a bunch of games during the 3 days I'll be out there. So I'll be definitely trying to talk to some folks and post up some content during the week. So everybody have a great week. Have a great rest of the week. Enjoy the early NCAA games. I know a lot of people love March Madness. Everybody fill out your brackets. I hope everybody's brackets are great. Nobody gets an early bust on their bracket. So enjoy the rest of the week. Enjoy the spring training games. Season starts on the 29th, which is just a couple of weeks away. So, again, everybody have a great one, and we'll be back at you next week. Thanks again.